Ethiopia, a country that resisted the influence of Western Christianity until the 20th century. Although it is believed that Christianity was brought to Ethiopia by a eunuch who met Philip along a road, we do not have any evidence to that. But with great certainty we do know that Christianity came to Ethiopia by the witnessing of two Christian slaves who'd been sold to the royal courts by pirates. Around the year 340, they witnessed to the king, who was then baptized, making Christianity the official religion. After that time, Ge'ez, the language of Ethiopia, received the role of a sacred priestly language. Many sacred codexes and scrolls were written in Ge'ez and are scattered all over the world, some of which wound up in Abilene, Texas.
Well, Special Collections at Brown Library is a department of the library which collects and preserves and makes available for study and use materials that are somehow rare or fragile or one of a kind. We do not have any manuscript materials before the age of printing. So we don't have 9th century, 10th century, 14th century manuscript materials in this collection. What we do have are manuscript materials from about the 17th century to the present. And among those are some Ethiopic manuscripts which have come to us from two different donors. A number of years ago, Carl Hansen gave the ACU Library a large codex, an Ethiopic codex, which turns out to be a psalter with some other texts bound in it. And then about a year ago, one of our alumni who works in the movie industry named Nelson Coates, he works in Hollywood, and he works with films as a set producer, designer. And so he's always looking for auctions and period pieces that he can use in movie sets. So he was at an estate sale in Savannah, Georgia. And there were several parcels for sale, for auction in that sale of Ethiopic codices, and so he bid on one of these and purchased it, and then brought it to us and donated it for our special collections. So when he came to present the codices to us, I invited Dr. Nickum and several other folks from College of Biblical Studies to come receive them and appreciate them. And sure enough, Dr. Nickum could identify immediately that they were in Ge'ez and that they were, he could even begin to tell us what the contents of the volumes were. So Nelson brought us two volumes, both of them illustrated, and both of them composed of a variety of actual texts bound together into a little book with wooden covers. And I remember that when he looked at them the very first day he saw them, he thought that one of them might be as old as the late 1600s or the early 1700s. I'm sure he'll want to make additional examinations and determine that.
The two manuscripts that were donated recently to ACU both contain the praises of Mary. Now, frequently the praises of Mary is not circulated just by itself. Frequently other texts, some of the canticles of the New Testament, occasionally some extra psalms, often a work that's called the Gates of Light. The significance of these manuscripts is in large part as a tribute to the scribal heritage of Ethiopia. Both texts are written in extremely small letters. The one that also adds musical notation is nearly microscopic. Clearly, these were personal devotional books that were created on demand by a very highly trained scribe for someone who wanted to have these books as devotional materials. But even the musical notation suggests some sort of liturgical use for that particular manuscript. Another thing that's interesting about the copying of Ethiopian books is that the procedures that they use have not changed much over the last 1,000 years. And so what we have in Ethiopian codicology is the preservation of the very form of making books very early on in Christian history. And so it's a modern practice deeply rooted in the past. And our interest is not then just in the texts that are preserved, but the very materials and the very pattern that they follow to put these things together. It provides a wonderful window into ancient bookmaking practices. There are a number of scrolls in Ethiopian religious practice, all of which are in some sense viewed as magical. So the scrolls are magical documents, and they are extremely plentiful, probably hundreds of thousands, maybe more. But in terms of those that are cataloged, certainly about 100,000. As for codices, we're not sure how many there are. We just try to make a general estimate based on the amount of material we have found at monasteries and churches in Ethiopia just recently. And we believe that there are probably 1 million codices in Ethiopia itself. Out of the entire number of Ethiopic codices in the entire world, we have probably managed to catalog and photograph about 100,000. So there's still quite a lot of work to be done.